Andi Academy. Knowledge to inspire a nation.
Ika, you are still at mute.
Thank you for this reminding. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Professor Marlon Dumas, Profesor Marcelo La Rosa, Profesor Hayo Riers, dan selamat malam kepada Bu Mahendrawati Erawan, Bapak Hamzah Rici, dan seluruh audiens yang sudah datang pada malam hari ini. Welcome to the book launch of Fundamental Proses Bisnis and panel discussion with the topic of how to learn and teach with business process management. In this session, we are also here with Andi Academy, a program by Andi Publisher, where we can learn together and share our knowledge for a better nation. To find out more about Andi Academy, please like and subscribe the YouTube channels of TVND. Now, let's see for our agenda for tonight. So after this welcoming participant or the opening session, we will have the panel discussion with the moderators and also the speakers. It will be followed up by the Q&A session with the participants. And there will be a Zoom prize during the Q&A session for the lucky participants who will share or who will ask the best questions. And now, we are moving to the first agenda. But first, I would like to introduce you our moderators. First, Ibu Mahendrawati Erawan, the Associate Professor of Department of Information System, Institut Teknologi 10 November, Surabaya, together with Bapak Hamzah Rici, the Associate Professor of Department of Accounting, Faculty of Economy and Business, University of Pajajaran. Both of them are the founder of Indonesian Business Process Management Association, or IBPMA. So without further ado, I will deliver time for Bu Mahendrawati Erawan and Bapak Hamzah Rici. The time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, Bu Ika, but I cannot see the slide share.
Oh, okay. I think it's because the spotlight is...
It's a spotlight. Okay then.
Yeah.
So I have to read out from my own. All right. So thank you very much again and welcome for everybody who has joined us today, and of course myself and Pak Hamzah as my co-translator and moderators. We are very happy and glad to have you all here. And we have already the 4 panelists. Actually, Jan just joined us. Welcome, Jan. And so before we start with the panel, there will be 45 minutes panel discussion followed by Q&A. You will be given a form later to fill in for the questions. Now, before I continue with the panel discussion, I was about to give you an overview or introduction about the 4 panelists. But I think each and one of them are thought leaders in BPM, then they don't need no introduction, but I should have to do it anyway. But I'm not going to talk about their CV in detail. So please, Bu Ika, can you show? The first speaker is Professor Marlon Dumas, who is a professor of information systems in Software Engineering and Information Systems Group, the University of Tartu, Estonia. Professor Dumas holds a PhD in computer science from University Grenoble Alps in France, and his research is in process modeling, analysis, refactoring, and mining. He is also the co-founder and partnership manager of Apromore. Our second speaker is Professor Marcelo La Rosa. He holds a PhD in computer science from Queensland University of Technology, and his research is in process mining, analysis, and consolidation. He's also the CEO and co-founders of Apromore. Our third speaker is Professor Jan Mendling. He's an Einstein Professor of Process Science in Department of Computer Science, Humboldt-Universität zu Berlin in Germany. He holds a PhD in Economics and Business Administration from Vienna University, Austria. His research is in business process management and process mining. He's also the co-founder and head of partnerships and knowledge of Norija. Last but not least, we have Professor Hayo Reyers, who is a professor of business process management and analytics in Department of Information and Computing Sciences, Utrecht University, the Netherlands. Professor Reyers holds a PhD in mathematics and computer science in Eindhoven University of Technology, and his research is in business process management, workflow technology, business process improvement, and conceptual modeling. He is also the Chief Innovation Officer of Process Diamond. Professor Reyers, would you like to speak in Indonesia for a little bit?
I could try, of course. Selamat malam semuanya.
Selamat malam. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now that we introduced the four speakers, we will also briefly take you through the journey of the book, Fundamentals of Business Process Management. So it all begins in 2013 with the first edition of the book. Then the second edition came in 2018. Since then until now, the book has been translated into Persian, Greek, German, and Spanish. And today, we are happy to announce that the book has finally been translated into Bahasa Indonesia. So, it is a great pleasure that this book has taken us all through this journey. Now, to start the panel session, the first one is really how we can teach or how we can use the book. So actually, I forgot this part. So we will skip it and save it for later. Okay, how to use the book. So in the first part of the book, the authors has clearly tell us that business process management has evolved from various disciplines, both from ranging from industrial engineering and then also information technology and also management. So the book has been used in various disciplines and also at different levels, bachelor degree, master degree, and even for executive training. So in this first section, I would like to ask the four panelists about their experience in using the book in these various occasions. So let's start with the first one. So how actually you use the book to teach about a business course at the undergraduate level? Would you like to answer that, Jan? If not, then...
Wait. 1, 2, 3? One,
yes.
2, 3? Sound is up. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Warm welcome and thank you very much, Mahendra and Hamza, for organizing this session here. It's great to discuss this with all of you. And one thing that I would like to share to start with is that with the book, we consider an approach that follows the BPM life cycle. And that means, in essence, that we take the students through each of the steps of discovering a process, of analyzing it, towards redesigning it and then also implementing it. And one of the key challenges that I have observed from my undergraduate teaching is that many students in their early stage of their studies have very little sensitivity, very little experience with what it actually means to work in a larger organization that's organized in division of labor. And that is one of the key challenges for teaching BPM altogether, because with that understanding that this is tricky and difficult and that there are many problems and many issues, it might actually look too, well, I'd say too logical how we analyze processes and how we work with them. So what I try to do in my courses is that I expose them to a process that is realistic. I organize group works such that they have to apply the analysis techniques to that realistic process. And with that, they obtain an understanding of what the challenges are in getting all the information together and also experiencing that, well, let's say, coming up with questions to people who work in the process, that this is not always so welcomed as they might actually hope for. And I think this is a key thing for teaching BPM in connecting the theoretical concepts really with practical applicability.
Okay, so do you use the book entirety? I mean, all the chapters, or did you pick some of the chapters to focus more on?
Right. So I typically manage to go with an undergraduate course, let's say up until the stage where we redesign processes. So in particular with business students at their undergraduates, we typically do not manage to go into much details of really implementing the processes.
Okay.
And this is something that is easier with more experienced students that have more technical exposure.
All right. Thank you. Then it would be interesting to learn how the book can be used in a different setting. For example, in undergraduate, but from computer science. And Hayo, would you like to answer that?
Certainly, thank you very much. And just like Jan, I would like to thank everybody involved in organizing this event. So for computer science students, I find it, there is a similar problem as Jan indicated for business students at their undergraduate levels. They often do not have this organizational context, the understanding of why working in a process-oriented way is a challenge at all. But what I like to focus on with computer science students is the modeling part. A big aspect in managing processes is to have an understanding of these processes, which often goes through creating visual models on these processes. And modeling itself is a challenging task, especially for younger students who haven't had that experience in other courses. So I tend to focus then on these parts and also use the chapters in the book, the basic modeling approach and the advanced modeling constructs, to purely focus on this. And my experience is that students already find it hard to make decisions like what to abstract from in descriptions about processes when they create a model, how they should make different modeling decisions. So my approach is then often to use chapters on process modeling and spend a lot of time on analyzing and comparing the solutions that different students make for the same exercises. And often these discussions on why the models have been created in the way students have done so help students to become more comfortable with process modeling, conceptual modeling more in general. And that is, I think, for undergraduate students already a very nice objective and a very nice outcome of a course. This knowledge is not only useful for other modeling courses that they may, find in their curriculum, but also gives a good fundament for more advanced editions of process management courses in later years.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think Ika and myself is teaching at the moment, and always the challenge is the modeling part, because they tend to ask what is the correct one, even though with the same text description they have come up with so many different answers.
Exactly.
Still,
Yeah.
yeah. So
for many students, it's surprising that there is also not a single good answer, right? That it depends on many factors, on interpretation, but also on the purpose of the model, and also on style and personal taste, how models can come about. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That is a good comparison between from what Jan has mentioned and from your side. But also, if you put a lot of emphasis on the modeling, what about the other chapters or the other parts of the book? Do you also introduce that, or is there any part that you don't actually introduce?
So often I always, for any type of course I teach, I always use the introductory chapter on process management to set the stage. Mm-hmm. I often refer to the process management life cycle, which is also described there. But I would indeed stick to these modeling parts. If there is a clear connection in the curriculum to automation technologies, it may be a good link to also use that chapter. But very often I stick to these parts. There was enough, the modeling part, there was enough content to create a course around this, indeed.
Okay, thank you. That would be a setup for a good discussion later, I think. And now moving on to master students. So how actually the book can be used for master student? Marlon, would you like to share your experience on this?
Certainly, yes. I started teaching. I moved to the University of Tartu around early 2008 and started my BPM course soon after here. And I initially, I am in an Institute of Computers, Department of Computer Science. So I initially was teaching to students at the master's level in computer science or software engineering courses, technical students. And they appreciated a lot everything to do with the automation part. You know, let's build an app that, you know, automates the coordination in the process. But not, and also the modeling part. And because of the engineering background, they liked a lot all the chapter about quantitative analysis, for example. But then in the middle, I was trying to teach process identification, like architecture, qualitative analysis techniques, which is chapter 6 of the book, redesign techniques, you know, to generate ideas for redesign. And also the bigger picture of BPM, you know, everything related to strategic alignment and governance, etc., which is now chapter 12 of the book. And it was very difficult to convey the message to them that they needed to learn this, because yeah, we are engineers, we don't do qualitative analysis, right? Or we don't care much about strategic alignment. We are waiting for people to tell me what to do. So in 2011, I was invited by our business school to give a BPM course to their students. These are like some sort of executive MBA students who work and come to take their courses, let's say on the weekends or at nights. And it was the reverse situation. So it was very easy to convince them that we need to talk about strategic alignment and governance and process identification, architecture, KPIs. Very easy. Chapter 2 of the book, chapter 1, the introduction, they love it. Chapter 2, identification, they love it. And everything to do with governance, which is now chapter 12, they love it. They also like analysis techniques, qualitative analysis techniques. Some would like also quantitative, some like it less. The modeling part, they find it boring. It's a bit too detailed. Yeah. And the automation part, I didn't even try. I kind of left it superficially because they wouldn't have been likely to go and refine their models to that level. And then in 2014, I had a fantastic situation where I had a possibility of merging these two courses. And actually, I had started it before. What I did is that I was teaching in parallel to business and to computer science. And I did this for, at the end of the semester, I give them a mini project. I give them a scenario, and I ask them to apply the whole life cycle of that scenario, you know, scope the process, define the performance measures, model the process, analyze it, redesign it, and implement it in a BPMS, right? And I had the idea, let me force the students to work across. So students must form teams of 4, 2 people from the MBA and 2 people from that software engineering or computer science background have to come together and produce a report. And the results were wonderful, yeah? And finally, the IT students started to get the point of the other side of the equation, and the business students started to appreciate that you needed to connect BPM with automation and IT. And then in 2014, I had the formidable opportunity of merging them, and I have been teaching.
Recording in progress.
So I have been teaching for the past 6-7 years to a hybrid group of students, which nowadays is more like 50%, 50% IT business, and they manage to, I get them together in the classwork, I try to mix them as much as possible, and I think maybe that mixture of business and IT people at the master's level is perhaps even more powerful than the content of the book itself. Is the appreciation of the complementarity between the business perspective and the IT perspective in the context of business process improvement has proved to be very powerful, and it's a recipe that I would recommend as much as possible. So my main message for teaching BPM at the master's level is try to make it as interdisciplinary as possible, embrace the interdisciplinarity of the students, and within what your institution allows, try to combine IT and business groups. If you cannot do it in your own university, why not you try to cooperate with somebody in another university that will have students with an MBA background? You can get the students to do joint projects across universities within Indonesia or elsewhere. I think it's an excellent experience for people also to learn to cooperate internationally.
That's wonderful. That's a good idea, really, because I found it the same problems that already stated, that some students are more into specific part and they have capabilities in one specific part, but not on the other. So it would be interesting if they can work together from across fields, different fields. But do you have any difficulties in, for example, in project, there's always, you have to do a lot more, because in real cases, for example, I know in the book you give a lot of examples from real cases, but during teaching, do you also use other supplementary resources for the projects? Yeah.
I guess we will say more about that in the second part. I might have been sharing the wrong screen, right? I will try to share screen.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna visit you back after that.
Yeah. So am I sharing screen?
Yes.
And you're not seeing yourself, but my browser, right? Yeah. So I'm going to give you better, and this is part of the second part. The course that I teach is available online, and here's the browser where you can find it. And in here you will find lectures, the introduction to BPM process. And this is chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and then the whole life cycle. And towards the end, you see something like after process monitoring, there is a period where there are no lectures. Yeah. And what I do is that I deliver to the students an assessment, which is like a project, and you can find sample projects in here, which is inspired from things that are in the book, but referring to additional material as well. So I usually take from Harvard Business, from the Harvard Case Studies website, I take some case studies where there is like a 10 pages description of a scenario, and then I ask them to go through all the BPM life cycle in terms of improving a given business process. And that's how I usually manage to incorporate in the same scenario business aspects and IT aspects and get the students to work together to realize them.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And of course, in the section 2, we will revisit again about these resources. Okay. Yeah. Now we've learned about how to use the book for business course, and then also IT course, and also in master level. I heard that also the book has been used for executive training. Marcello, would you like to share on that, please?
Hi, Mahindra. Yes, of course. And thank you very much for the invitation. So when I was working at QT for about 5 years, I was heading a BPM corporate education arm. And the objective of this program was to teach business process management at different levels to practitioners. So we had a suite of different courses that were inspired by the content of the book. We had courses at the strategic level and courses at the operational level. Those at the strategic level, they were targeting executive managers, directors, and partners. Whereas those at the operational level, they were targeting mostly business analysts, but also process owners, solution architects. And from time to time, we also got some developers. So we were offering these training courses both as public courses on calendar dates, set up front at the beginning of the year, so people could book, like typically on an individual level, or maybe a group of 3, 5 employees from the same organization, or an entire organization could book a course at the corporate level just for their specific audience. And that would typically come also with some customization requests. So for example, they would provide specific examples and case studies or material upon which we were asked to build case studies, so that the course material was grounded in the specific context of that organization. Right. When I came to the University of Melbourne, then I re-established this program. So we have been running that since 2018, and recently we've done a partnership countrywide with PwC, so that we have basically taken the material that we had developed at the University of Melbourne and enriched that with experience from the field directly coming from PwC's consultancy. So let me focus on 3 courses as part of this program. One is Fundamentals of BPM. So this course has as the main audience business analysts. And basically the paradigm that we use is BPM as a project. So basically we go with the participants through the various phases of the life cycle that Mahindra showed before, the one that we present in chapter 1 of the book. So we go through process identification, discovery, quantitative and qualitative analysis techniques. Then we deal with process redesign, a little bit on automation, and then monitoring. As Ayo was saying, the experience is similar to that of teaching business students, in that we tend not to go into the technical details. And what we do to guide the discussion is to overlay a framework based on value-driven BPM inspired by the work of Michael Roisman that we present in chapter 12 of our textbook, BPM Maturity. So basically, to better put things in context, we teach BPM and the various techniques in each phase of the life cycle driven by the value that the organization needs to achieve using BPM. So BPM for improving productivity and efficiency, BPM for enhancing customer experience and quality of services, BPM for monitoring risk, governance and compliance, and BPM to facilitate agility. On the basis of the specific requirements, then we indicate one or more techniques as being more suitable than others. For example, the use of Lean Six Sigma techniques for incremental improvement to improve on efficiency and on quality, as opposed to techniques from conformance checking for process mining to help monitor compliance. On the other hand, in the strategic BPM course, where the target audience is typically executive level participants, then we keep it at a very high level. We don't delve into the details of how we can carry a project, but rather the paradigm that we use is BPM as a program. BPM as a holistic initiative that is made of different projects within the organization. So after we introduce the discipline, using the content from chapter 1, and we provide a brief excursus of the life cycle, so we just overview the remaining chapters. The key chapter we focus on in that course is chapter 12. And the framework that we use there is the BPM maturity model presented in chapter 12. So basically, we say that to succeed in the execution of a BPM program, again intended as a set of projects, we do not only have to focus on mastering methods and technological solutions along the different phases of the life cycle, but also we need to keep a high strategic alignment with the objectives of the organization. We need to establish and evolve over time a governance structure that defines roles, responsibilities, and decision-making processes of those that work in the BPM program. And then we shed light on the importance of people and culture for the success of the BPM program. Now, when you deliver this in a professional training setting, you can't keep it at the theory level. You also need to give them an opportunity to do some practice. So we intertwine exercises, in-class exercises, with the theory. And the approach that we follow is example, theory, exercise. So very similar to the approach that we follow in the various chapters of the book. With the difference that, of course, when they are in the class, they can do exercises in groups. So a modeling exercise in group, or an exercise where they need to identify what would be the most suitable techniques, so to decline a BPM program for a specific objective that the organization needs to achieve. And of course, in COVID time, we had to switch online. So for example, the strategic BPM course that is offered as 2 days face-to-face, we offer it as the equivalent of 4 online sessions of 3 hours each. The fundamentals of BPM course is offered over 5 days face-to-face, or the equivalent of that's done online as 10 sessions of 3 hours each. You can do, for example, 1 session a day for 2 consecutive weeks, or you can, 1 day on, 1 day off, depending on the delivery mode that you agree upon with the company. And of course, when we do it for a specific organization, then we like to contextualize the exercises and try as far as is possible to use that specific organization context for the exercises. And then, of course, as you can imagine, that increases the level of engagement because they are talking about their own problems and they are identifying together solutions to real problems.
Thank you. That is fantastic, Marcello. But now I would like to invite all of you, I mean, if you can, based on your experience, I know that you have taught in many different level and also different discipline. How did you customize the book according to each each requirement of the curriculum? For example, from what I heard, Hayo focused more on the modeling part, and for the computer science course at bachelor level. And so, and I don't know if you have any experience of combining like what Marlon did, for example, merging two courses at undergraduate level. Any of you?
I once delivered for a few years a subject at the Queensland University of Technology that was done both for bachelors and masters. Back at that time, that we had also these joint subjects and with a mixed cohort. And as my colleagues were saying before, the background is quite different. So typically in Australia, the master level student already has some work experience. So they are now studying part-time, or they are taking a break from their job to pursue a master's course, whereas the bachelor students are pretty much fresh off high school. So there the challenge was to come up with different learning objectives for the two different cohorts, because we had to differentiate. We couldn't just clone the subject for masters and bachelor. So for example, when it came to assignments, the master students had extra tasks related to reflecting on the business impact of the project outcome. So we try to stress more the business side, like the value that they are supposed to achieve through the delivery of a BPM project, which is something that is not so easy to discuss, like Jan was saying, at the bachelor level. And then, of course, on the technical level, we also had some extra exercises, like some advanced modeling to be done by the master students. So it was possible to combine it, though, of course, is not ideal, because you have to deal with two different cohorts, and one may not necessarily understand the other. Like the bachelors may not understand the level of reasoning of the masters. The masters may think that we are going too slow because what we are teaching is sort of granted for them. So that was one of the challenges.
So Galaxy G6, sorry, Jan, would you like to add more? Because Jan is connecting from his mobile device.
Yes. I think you haven't unmuted.
Please,
the
can
voice.
you unmute yourself?
All right. All right. I think, thanks a lot for switching it on. Yes, I'm sorry, I had to switch devices. Right. So I think one thing that is important, and I really have to emphasize this here with my recent experience of changing from a business school to a computer science department. It's really important to customize the material to the preferences of your student cohorts. And I see that the computer science students that I'm teaching now, they appreciate different things than the business students. And I think this awareness is important, that you then can give more space, let's say maybe in terms of technical content for the computer science students, while the business students, they may be more interested in the conceptual side. So I think this is something that is important to keep in mind. The book offers enough material to give one or the other aspect more emphasis. So it is in the end for each of the lecturers using the book a matter of selecting those topics that you find most helpful and most interesting to your audiences.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, because all of you are very much into research about process mining, do you actually teach the process mining at undergraduate level?
I run a business process mining course which I started just earlier this year in February, which is at the master's level. And it is, I guess there are two ways of putting it. And I have always had, and my colleagues, John and Hayo and Marcelo, have always had a process mining component within the BPM course. So when you reach, as part of the life cycle, you reach post-monitoring, and we teach process mining in there. But we have now cohorts of students that are specialized in data science or business analytics. And to those students, like it would be overkill to try to do the whole life cycle because they are mostly interested in data. So then the thing I did is that I turned around the course in a way, and I turned it into a business process mining course. The introduction is the same. So I introduced business process management and position process mining as part of the BPM discipline. Then I go briefly, like in a few weeks, into the topics of modeling, brief introduction to a very small subset of BPMN, performance measures, and process identification, and I jump into quantitative analysis because simulation is a very important technique later, for what-if analysis on top of process mining. And towards the fourth week, I switch to process mining straight. And then I start introducing all the process mining capabilities, automated process discovery, conformance checking, variant analysis, etc. And then we end up with a project where they get now, instead of a scenario, they get a scenario plus a data set, and they have to analyze how to improve that process using insights from the data. So it's a process mining course embedded in the BPM discipline. I will also share the link to the website of that course in case some of the participants would like to check how you can restructure the material to teach process mining as a separate course.
Thank you, Marlon. Okay, anybody else would like to add, the four panelists, before I hand over to Pak Hamza for the second section? No? Then I think for this first section, I think I can conclude. So I will hand over now to Pak Hamza.
Thank you, Bu Mahendra. Well, I think it was a very interesting to hear all of the sharing from all of the panelists, with respect to how they manage to address every single aspect in the business process life cycle into its individual setting for different courses. And now we can turn our discussion to the other things that I think have the same equal importance, which is on the teacher side. So as you may also be aware that I myself has barely just introduced these subjects for the second time. This is the second semester that I have been introducing the subject, and it was delivered for two undergraduate study programs, which are digital business programs and accounting programs. So yes, it was in the business side. So there are things that I think we as a lecturers also have the same concerns and also have some interest with regards to how to deliver the topic. And in terms of the teachers, actually the book itself has provided quite a number of resources, as you maybe for all the gentlemen and all the audience who wants to visit the website. The book itself has provided and has been generous to provide many resources, teaching resources like lectures, notes, and many more. So with that in mind, there are things that I think we can start with the resource in terms of the video. So the book has provided quite a number of video, and actually every slides and every chapters has been provided the video by Jan, yeah, and and also Bu Mahendra has also provided several videos for as the as the resource companion. So Jan, maybe you would like to talk about that further in terms of the video.
Yes, thanks a lot, Hamza. Yes. So I think one thing that is important to maybe to emphasize for those people who do not yet know the book, when we started working on the book, right from the start, we thought of it more as a larger initiative of teaching BPM, and the book is part of that, and the book integrates into a larger spectrum of materials that go with the book. You saw the links that Marlon already shared, and on the website of our book we have various teaching materials available, and these different materials play a very important role for making the learning experiences for the students as beneficial as possible. One thing that I often hear from my students is that what the students appreciate from the BPM courses that we teach, that it is compared to other courses that they typically get as a very structured course, and they explicitly say so. And thanks to the alignment of the book with the BPM life cycle, it's really a story from start to end. Yeah? So, and in order to further facilitate this, during the pandemic times, we recorded a set of videos that provide kind of a quick summary of the book. So the videos that I myself recorded are essentially picking the most important ideas from each of the chapters and sections, and they introduce it in a compact way. And all of these videos together are almost exactly 4 hours. And I think if you have a student in your class who is not willing to invest 4 hours, it should be actually super feasible for everybody to just pick up the content from this. So during the pandemics, that was very useful for my teachings, and this is the reason why I created these videos. But I see also that many other lecturers are using them, and find them apparently useful and helpful. There are also other videos. Marlon and Marcello actually created a much more ambitious series of videos that were used for the online course that we have been offering while Marcello was still at QUT, and that provides kind of a different and complementary perspective at the material, which is strongly practice oriented. So, and that means any student who appreciates watching videos in a self-paced manner can make use of these videos, and they're also helping the teachers that students can prepare for that class, so that when you're really sitting together in the same room, that you can discuss things and start discussing things at a more detailed level, and you don't have to spend so much time on the basics.
Okay, that's interesting. So, and even indeed that we are thankful that from your video we have also. Actually, I put your links, yeah, your YouTube links in each of the respective session in our teaching. So I hope that the students can maintain their own space of learning, excluded beyond the teaching times. Okay, thanks, Jan, for the comments. And we turn to the other resources which I think is also important, especially for those who are more into an executive or executed based modeling or like process monitoring and many more, which is the automation labs. So I believe that from our previous session, Marlon has been spoken quite a number of experience, yeah, in terms of the facilities and also the resources of the lab. So I would like to address this aspect, yeah, the automation labs, to Marlon. So please.
Right, thank you. So I think as Jan mentioned before, we have a very broad range of course material available, and I was sharing the link on Zoom window so everybody can explore it themselves. Within there is that website that I share on Zoom, the fundamentals of bpm.org website. There is a section called teaching material, and in that section, which I am, I think, now sharing in my screen, within that section, you will find for every chapter of the book, the slide deck that we will typically use for it, different versions of those slide decks, figures, etc. And when we got to the part of process of implementation with executable process modeling, we thought that we needed a more in-depth, practical, hands-on treatment of this topic. So we took the specification of the loan of a loan application assessment process, which you will find in exercise 9.14 of the book as indicated here. And we decided to ask different people, including BPM vendors, to take that process specification and write a tutorial of how you will be implementing it in that tool. And through different contacts and different, particularly contacts with consultants, contributions from students and vendors, you will find the, for different systems, Visagi, Bonita, Camunda, IBM BPM, Oracle BPM, and YOL, you will find the lab notes which show you how to implement that process that is described in the book, in that tool, in a very detailed way. You know, it's like step by step, the screens that you have to follow, the pitfalls, how to draw the process model, how to add the resources, how to define the business rules, etc., so that you can build the fully executable processes. Many of our other instructors even started themselves to write these tutorials themselves. So, for example, George Everman from Humboldt-Universität in Newfoundland in Canada, he came up with a solution to this lab in Bonita. And one of the things that he does is that he starts doing it with the students, and then he lets them complete it. Yeah. And then he gives them exercises like, now please modify this process and add one more activity in here, or add one more decision point. And that way he can generate classwork exercises and also practical exercises on the basis of this. So students first follow the lab notes to implement the basic process, and then you can give them exercises on top of that. And this is, we have found very, very powerful. So I wanted to say also that BPM systems evolve, and now it is possible to do this lab using many other tools. I believe that some aspects of this lab can be done using emerging RPA tools. So I invite the community of teachers present here to take the challenge of developing some additional material on top of the material that is available here. And if you do it, please do contact us in this very same website that I share. There is our email address in here, BPM textbook, and you can drop us an email and say, like, I developed this lab and and I would like to share it with the rest of the community in Indonesian, in Bahasa. It's fine with us. We will share it around. And also, you can, if you drop us an email and you tell us that you are teaching BPM using the book, we will then invite you to join our Google group of Fundamentals of Business Process Management.
Yes, that's a very high. That's right, indeed. Respecting. I mean, we will respect with the spirit of sharing that you have been given to us, yeah, especially for the earlier adopter like me and Bu Mahendra and many more. Yeah, as you can see that it's also good to have the different vendors applying for the same teaching materials, yeah, with especially in terms of the lab. So we can see the implementation of the business process models cannot not only apply to one respective vendors, but it actually can be applied to cross vendors or cross business process management systems. So yeah, it's good to know for that. And one of the resources or one of the things that has been also in the increasing in trends is the fact that their process mining has made some trajectory, yeah, in global wide. So and we also see that from our introduction slide that all of the professors that has been the authors, they are all the respected figures in terms of the process minings. And with that in mind, I would like to ask Hayo in terms of the process mining software. Perhaps you have some comments and how to put that process mining into the teacher's side.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that question. So the book itself, of course, deals with process mining, has a number of exercises in that on the topic as well. What I tend to do within my course is to also expose students to specific technologies. There is a producer of process mining software in the Netherlands, Fluxicon. And they have a process mining tool called Disco. And what they provide is a very nice academic case where students in perhaps less than 40 minutes can get acquainted with the most common analytics features in a process mining tool like Disco. I will share the link to that case in the chat a little later on, and I typically program that session as part of the overall course. For example, if in a week I would give lectures on the one hand and also reserve time for doing exercises on the other, I typically use part of that exercise part to have students carry out such a tutorial. I know that many other process mining tools and tool vendors provide similar cases and similar tutorials. So it is really a matter of looking around for different teachers to look at those options and also see how much time they really would like to spend on using that technology. But I think in general it's a really nice additional step to not only let students read about the technology, but also give them some hands-on experience. Another thing that is perhaps worth mentioning is that in the course setup that I have at Utrecht is that I often have students involved in a particular project where they would analyze a specific business process. I know that Jan Mentling also often does that, for example, you can ask students to look into processes within the university itself, which they are to some extent already familiar with. They can collect data about those processes. They can also interview people, stakeholders in those processes, and collect data around these things. And that is also, I think, a very good vehicle to give students experience, hands-on experience with all the concepts and all the technologies that are treated in the book. So I will briefly follow up after my answer, Hamza, in the chat with a link to the Fluxicon pages. But as I said, other vendors have probably similar things. I can imagine that also Marlon and Marcello can give a specific link to the Apamora platform, for example.
In the interest of neutrality, I have actually posted 3 links in the chat window to the 3 academic alliances I am aware of in the field of process mining, so that we do not bias anything.
Yep. Okay, we see that. So we have at least 4 process mining platforms that are available for the academics to use, and I think it's good things to have this kind of resources for, especially for the teachers, and also to enhance the experience of teaching for the lecturers in terms of to be delivered to their students. And we thank for that. And the last part of our section tonight is my session, is whether there are further solutions and exams. So I think as lecturers, it is also important things for having some kind of test banks or many answer and questions, bank tests and all the solutions. So it would be a great part for our teaching experience that we can also dig out. So Marcelo, maybe you may have some comment for that.
So we have a Google group for educators in the area of business process management. Marlon before showed a mailing list that we can post in the chat here on Zoom. You can approach us on that mailing list asking to become part of the Google group on the book. You just have to provide evidence of your academic affiliation or affiliation to a teaching or research institution. And there are over 500 members in that group from more than 300 universities in the world. And in that group, we have 2 parts. One, access to extra material that complements the one that is already available for free, of course, on the website of the book, fundamentalsofbpm.org. And that includes example exams with complete solutions. Of course, we only share this with educators, and that is why we ask for proof of affiliation to an academic or research or teaching institution. And the second part is that there is a lively community that engages in discussions around how to teach using the book, and more broadly, how to teach business process management. So you see that there are colleagues that exchange tips on their experience, teaching for a specific student cohort or teaching a specific subject, or asking how would you go about presenting this topic using this chapter. So we invite you to join this community of like-minded educators, not only for gaining access to this extra material, but also to contribute to the discussion as well as the material itself. Some of that material comes from our own colleagues, so not just from the 4 authors of the book.
Yeah. Right. So I think it's also an invitation to all the lecturers who are interested to become one of the adopters. So we can actually, put some enrichment, to the already available solution and questions for our own needs, and not only from the 4 authors, but also from you, from all of us. Okay, thank you, Marcelo. I think we can wrap up for this session for the teacher sides, and the last or the third section would be is flipping the session actually. So rather than questioning all of the 4 authors, now it's time for all the 4 authors to questions asked back. So
I think we run out of time actually.
Really? Oh,
7. Yeah, really? No, seriously.
I didn't read
Well,
this.
okay then. One question.
Yes, Mahendra, Hamza. So I think what we all want to know, of course, is how is BPM developing in Indonesia, and how will the book actually contribute to leveraging BPM initiatives in the country, and how do you plan to support not only your own classes but maybe also the larger BPM community with it?
I believe Mahendra would like to answer that question, Ken.
Well, you can add later. So yes, we are actually very happy that after a long time, we actually joined forces to form what we called as Indonesian Business Process Management Association. And there are some of the active members here. And mostly we are still academics, but we get more and more practitioners as well. So hopefully later they will ask some more about how the book can be used to practitioners as well. And as Jan mentioned already, that I also created, well, forcefully to create the YouTube channel to share the materials. So it's quite helpful for my student because I forced them to watch. They are here at the moment. You can ask later. But other lecturers can also use it. So, and if they are interested, they can email me or Pak Hamza. Then we can form a Google groups like you did with the fundamentals of business process management. So if any of you are interested, please email, and also subscribe, like, and share my channel, of course. No, just kidding. All right.
You are a content provider now.
No. Right. I'm serious that we are running out of time because we already have 11 questions in the Google form. Would the panelists would like to check on the questions, please? Because then I would really love for the audience to have more time to share with you. All right. So how would you like to do this? Would, for example, Hayo, would you like to start first? Oh, I'm sorry. Marcello, maybe you would like to start first because
yes,
it's quite late at your end. You can pick the name and then we can translate because some are in Indonesia. I know.
So I have to select a question and answer that. I can see the questions, but I can't see the names.
Right.
I can see the questions at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. Let's read this live, right? So because I see that one refers to me. First of all, I would like to say thanks for this great opportunity to discuss with BPM gurus tonight. Thank you very much on behalf of the three amigos as well. My name is Yoga from University Internasional Semen, Indonesia. I have been using the book since 2018. Thank you. To teach business process design and analysis, enterprise architecture, and BPM subjects. And pretty much I adopted slides from fundamentals.bpm.org website. That is a very useful source, particularly from QT, since I did my master's studies there. So maybe you were a student of mine. But I'm interested. Yes, and now I can see you. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, he got an F.
F is the best score at QT. But I'm interested.
He was my student too, Marcello. So please be careful.
I know. But I'm interested in the explanation from Professor Marcello about the course for BPM professionals. If the conditions of the organizations are pretty much new about BPM, particular process modeling with BPMN, how much influence of the BPM course for professionals has on BPMN adoption in their organization? I found for some people, usually from technical background who are used to flow charting, they feel BPMN is too complicated. So basically the question is, how do we ensure that BPM sticks in an organization, especially at the operational level? When we talk to an audience like business analysts that may come from a business background and they are not enough acquainted with the technicalities of BPM, right? So they might find complex to use the BPMN notation. And indeed, if we focus specifically on the modeling subject, they may find the BPMN notation daunting because it has over 200 notation elements. So the way we teach it is very, very incrementally, and we do not teach it in its entirety, but rather we focus on the key concepts. What is important is that they understand, as Jan was saying, how to conceptualize a business process in the form of a process model. So understanding what is the right level of granularity that they should use to capture the process flow, its activities, and its routing constructs. If you understand that, then you can incrementally add more notation elements, but dividing them by areas. So we first teach what is the so-called core BPMN notation. So the activity, the start and end event, and the three simplest types of gateways, which are, by the way, those that are used the most in practice: XOR and NOR, to model mutually exclusive pathways, parallel pathways, inclusive pathways, and simple merge and synchronizing merge joins. So once you've taught that, you can start to incrementally enrich this notation by adding other elements. And one thing that we found that really helps is to use a unique working example. So Marlon was mentioning the loan application process. That is one that we use in the book. Another one is the order to cash. It's a process, one way or another, most people are familiar with. So you start by modeling really the basics. So the main flow. Then you add the resources that perform the various activities. So you add the pools and the lanes. And finally, you add the objects, so the artifacts, both information artifacts and flow material. That is what we do as part of these professional training courses. So basically, that's where we stop. And as you can see, this is the content that we treat in chapter 3 of the book, which is the basic process modeling. For a more technical audience, like in the context of computer science students or professionals that have a background in development, so in software development, then we also move to chapter 4. But again, we do that incrementally. We start by introducing different categories of events. So we talk about how we handle events for exchanging information between different business parties, so message events, to model timeouts and temporal constraints, so the timer events, to model exceptions, the signal events, and so on, the error event, and so on. But we do not teach the entire notation. And there are elements that I've never seen used in practice. And in the academic community a few years ago, there has been a very active discussion on how much notation is enough, how much notation is really needed. And we can see that in practice, after a few years, you know that the BPMN language was standardized in 2011 in its version 2.0. And now, after 10 years, we can say that a great majority of that notation is not used in practice. So de facto, people have focused really on the core notation and only a few extensions, which is what we think we've captured based on our own experience in chapters 3 and 4. More in general, when we talk about how to ensure that BPM sticks in an organization, then I go back to this framework that I was discussing before, the value-driven BPM. So that really helps the practitioner put things in context. Why am I doing the modeling? To achieve transparency. But okay, once I get the model, that's not an end. It's just a means to an end. The end is to use the model as a starting point, for example, to identify frictions, if your objective is to improve efficiency, or to segregate variants where the customer had a positive experience from those where the customer had a negative experience, in order to understand the root causes for these bad experiences. So where the value that you want to achieve is enhancing customer experience, right? So if you put things in context, driven by a strategic objective, then it's much easier to teach BPM to a professional audience, and for them then to retain this. And of course, the most important thing to do is to put things in practice. And what we suggest is to do a POC, a short and sharp proof of concept project. Because if you don't put these learnings in practice, you're gonna forget about them, right?
Thank you.
I would like to take the second question if I can.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, thank you. So there is the one in Bahasa Indonesia I will skip it. I will leave it for Hajo. So I want to take the next one then. Some organizations in Indonesia are still unfamiliar with BPM. Government public sector is currently triggering an initiative to improve their services. And we're referring here to the Indonesian government public sector organizations. But it seems that even the government agencies in Indonesia are unfamiliar with BPM too. So the question is related to the BPM maturity model or BPM capability framework. Which capabilities need to be considered and prioritized first for the initial initiative to be successful? So one thing so this relates to chapter 12 of the book, where we introduce a framework consisting of 5 areas and different capabilities in that areas. The main message we try to convey in that chapter is that you should not try to approach BPM from only one of those 5 areas. You need to balance across those areas. So one of the areas is the tools. If you're going to do BPM on a large scale, you need to set up the appropriate tools. But you also need to adopt appropriate methods for process modeling, analysis, redesign, identification, etc. But do not focus only on the methods and the tools. Do not just go and say, let me take this BPMN-based tool and start doing BPM. You also have to think about strategic alignment. Make sure that there is buy-in for BPM and there is an understanding of the benefits of BPM all the way from the upper management to the people on the ground, that everybody becomes aware of what BPM is doing for the organization and how it fits in the objectives of the organization. And also make sure that from the start you also set up governance structure so that it's very clear where is the BPM capability located in the organization. How can you engage with your peers in process improvement initiatives, etc. And finally, there are 2 other areas, people and culture, that are also very important. You need to train people into BPM early on, and that's why corporate training is very important, and you need to make people aware in the organization of process thinking. And you need to also develop a culture of continuous improvement. Recently there was a Japanese BPM guru sort of pointing out the difference, for example, between Toyota and Nissan in Japan. Toyota is an organization that for 50 years has been developing process thinking and process improvement as a culture, bottom up throughout the organization. Nissan is an organization that has been very top down, and you have CEOs with very strong personalities throwing in a lot of initiatives, strategic initiatives bottom up, but these initiatives do not stick. You need to be like the Toyotas. You need to make sure that everybody in the organization is participating in process improvement at the end. And this is something you have to develop from the start. Message: BPM is not top-down and it's not bottom-up, it's a combination of the two. Now, it is like you need to have the strategic alignment up, and you also need to have the people and the culture, the methods and the tools, everything together. That's the main message of chapter 12 of the book, and I think it largely addresses this question that was posed.
Thank you, Marlon. I think Hayo needs to leave, so would you like to take a question?
I was just about to leave, but if there is a short question, I can try and take it. Thank you.
Okay, so
good night.
just to pick it quick. First, I want to say thank you for your explanation about BPM. It's really opened mind to think out of my major. My name is Siriusman Waru. I'm a student, and the question is, which one is more important between personal knowledge or skill in my major study compared with BPM, because time is limited for me to study. His major is in informatics. Did you get the question? Sorry. Ayo?
Hello, I think this is a bit too... I think I won't be able to answer that in the minute I have left. So perhaps my friend Jan can take it. I'm saying good night to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
Ayo.
Okay. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right, so when somebody is asking an either-or question to me, I usually tend to answer, well, maybe it is not an either-or.
Please don't confuse him more, Jan.
I'm sorry?
Please don't confuse him more.
Yeah, but in the end, of course, there are restrictions, and for the fact that we don't have unlimited time and unlimited resources, we have to prioritize things. Yeah? So, and I think what is important to recognize is the following. What I've seen, not only in my own experiences, but what I've also seen in many pieces of research where people have been investigating the capabilities and the careers of people who actually started to work as a business analyst and who have actually leveraged on the skill sets that they acquired around process analysis, very specifically around process analysis. There's one pattern that you can observe. So those guys who have the skill set to do business process management, those who are able to do process analysis and process redesign, these are the guys that will very quickly obtain a very detailed yet also very broad understanding of the organizations in which they work. Yeah, so those who start projects, those who drive projects that have the ambition to improve processes, they will see different departments. They will learn how different parts of the organization work. They will get to see how the different information systems tie together in the processes and how that all supports strategy. And that is providing you with such a detailed and rich understanding of the organizations with which you work with, such that that I would say, if this is something that you actually aspire for, something that you like, then you should definitely focus on the skills. Because those people who have actually been working on those these process projects, often these are the guys that very quickly get promoted. These are the guys that also, once they approach a more senior level in the organization, can ask the right questions. They can understand how things work together in their organization. And these are really, really valuable resources for steering the organizations into the right direction into the future. So Well, it means if you're interested in a career, if you're interested in learning how organizations work, then I think learning and focusing on BPM skills is the right thing to do.
Thank you, Jan. We still have so many questions, so would you like to take more questions? Please.
I can take the one about teaching during the pandemic. I think that's something that has affected everyone one way or another. So during the pandemic or online class, how to encourage students not to get bored or feeling desperate, facing difficulties for learning the fundamentals of BPM. So, and then the question asks like, how long should the classes be, how to split between exercises and in theory, how to assess the student works, and in the context of corporate trainings, what are the insights after learning and implementing BPM, especially for companies that have already implemented other continuous improvement methodologies like Lean or Six Sigma. Right, so there's actually multiple questions. So let me answer the first one. So we have been teaching online now since March last year. And the forecast for next year is to at least teach in hybrid mode. Because, like, for example, here in Australia, we don't know if international students will be able to travel in since there are still travel restrictions in place. So even if we teach face-to-face, then the class will be almost empty. At our master's level, over 70% of our cohort is made up of international students. Wow. So we experimented with different delivery modes online, and one thing that worked very well for us is that you can do longer sessions. In the course, in the context of professional training courses, we did sessions of up to 3 hours, but I tend to make several breaks, so at least one per hour, and to intertwine discussions where I present with exercises where I use the breakout rooms so they can still have that feeling of working in groups, as well as asking continuously questions, you know, to the point of me stopping speaking unless they get to answer me. So it's a continuous back and forth between you as the lecturer and them as the audience to keep the engagement high. One thing that I also like is to ask them to switch on their videos if that is possible, because that increases their level of attention. If you switch off your video, you are automatically gonna get distracted because you feel like you can do that, right? So no one is watching you. So it's easier, but it is also, it's easier to keep the attention higher, but it is also less more interesting for you as a lecturer to see the faces and to try and understand from their facial expression what type of reaction they are having. So look, after 2 years, I can say that it's definitely possible to teach BPM, and I would say in general to teach online. You just have to take a couple more precautions to make sure that the engagement remains high. So one thing, another thing, just to complete on this one, is to avoid, especially for professional trainings, to avoid having sessions too far away from each other. Like once a day is pretty good because you keep the interest high and there is a segue into the next day. But if you do it once a week, the professional will lose the context. You know, because they are not a student studying that subject. They will switch to their job and do 20 other different things, you know, in the days coming to the next session. And another thing that works well is to do these sessions in the afternoon, like for example, 4 to 6 or 4 to 7. So they are done with their job for the day and that minimizes distractions. If you do it in the middle of the day, they are going to receive thousands of emails and they are going to get distracted by that. If you do it towards the end of the day, chances of getting emails in their inbox is less, chances of getting distracted is less. You know, they feel already fulfilled, that they've done their job for the day, so now they can do something for themselves. That would be the training on BPM.
Thank you.
There are many other questions as part of this. Maybe another one that I can pick is the one on how to establish BPM, if there are already other corporate improvement methodologies like Lean or Six Sigma. That is actually quite common. And the way we present BPM, as per chapter 1 of the textbook, is that we do not present BPM as a new methodology that plans to supplant the existing ones, but rather a methodology that embraces and reutilizes the existing methodologies and picking techniques, approaches, and tools from different other methodologies that have both preceded and succeeded BPM historically. For example, take process mining that came after BPM, yet these days is embedded in different phases of the life cycle, you know, discovery, analysis, redesign, monitoring. So the idea is to have a common framework. And that common framework is provided by the BPM life cycle that we present in chapter 1. On the basis of that framework and driven by the value that you want to achieve, then BPM can tap into Lean, like waste analysis or the voice of the customer, can tap into Six Sigma, with value-added analysis, for example, can tap into process mining with conformance checking or automated discovery, right? Or even more innovation-focused methodologies like design thinking and design-led innovation. So that's really, if you wish, the difference between BPM and all these other methodologies. You can still reuse all of them inside the BPM life cycle. And in doing so, clearly, you're not going to follow the other life cycles like the DMIC life cycle or the business process engineering life cycle. You're going to follow the BPM life cycle so that you do things in a certain order, but within each phase, you can reuse techniques from these other methodologies. So they see the complementarity. They don't feel menaced, right, by the fact that, okay, that now someone is trying to push BPM inside the company and I'm worried that I could lose my job because I'm a master black belt, right? No, rather, we show how you can reuse these capabilities inside an overarching framework that is the BPM life cycle.
All right. Marcello, thank you very much. I know that all of you are very limited in time. I think Jan also needs to leave. So I think we can wrap up because there are still many questions. We can send you an email, and if you could spend some time to answer some of the questions, that will be really great. Thank you very much, and I would return to the Master of Ceremony.
Okay, thank you. That's a wonderful discussion for today. So unfortunately, we are reaching the end of the session. But before we end the session, let's take a picture together. So please, the audience, turn on your camera if you can.
We missed 2 already. We should do it in the beginning. Sorry.
Yes.
You can modify the photo once you make it.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a picture. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. For maybe the next page, the last one.
Okay.
Thank you. So I believe there are still a lot of things you want to know and discuss with the speakers, but due to the time constraints, unfortunately, we are reaching the end of the session. So to understand more about the fundament, you can immediately buy and read this book. It will be available soon in all bookstores throughout Indonesia, both offline and also online. You can make a pre-order book through the link that I will share into the chat room. And now, again, thanks for the speakers and also the moderators for sharing your experience tonight. Thank you also for the audience for your enthusiasm to follow this event until the end. Hopefully, it can reach your references and provide a great insight for you to learn and teach BBM. Don't forget to like and subscribe to TV Andi's YouTube channel and also Bu Mahendra's channel, Yang Mendik's channel, Marlon Duma's channel, and all of the speakers' channel. Stay healthy and keep innovating.
Ika, I'm sorry.
Yes.
For the winners of the best questions and get the free books, we will contact you directly because there are still some questions that we need to go through. Okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you for the reminder. So for the winner of the Zoom prize, we'll contact the number that I have shared into the chat room. It will be the committee contact.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
This is the end of the session. Thank you again for
you
all
all.
the audiences and the speakers.
Thank you,
Stay
Ivan.
healthy.
Thank
Thank you,
Marcelo.
Marcelo, for staying up
Thank
late.
you.
Late.